So I'm gonna not, I don't really have much to say about what's left up here. So if you were still writing, then get it down real quick, and then we're gonna move on. Okay. Do remember that word tribute, okay, means you're paying some empire not to beat you up. Okay. All right. And what you pay them, it can vary. It can be horses, it can be silk, it can be people, like the Aztecs. What do you think the Aztecs would take your people for? Human sacrifice. Good. Okay. All right. And so, but it could be anything. It could be grain. It could be whatever it could be. Okay. Uh, you're also going to see this word a lot this year, right here. Coercive and coerce. Okay. As in coercive labor. What do you think coercive labor is? Forced labor. Okay. Can you give me an example of forced labor? Good. Okay, that would be one. Good. But that's not the only one. And as a matter of fact, knowing the different coercive labor systems in world history is a popular AP exam topic. So it's not just slavery. It also includes things like the Mita system of the Incas, okay, uh, the corvée over in France and Europe, serfdom, okay, lots of different things. Indentured servitude, okay. All right. So y'all done? Here, you need that for a second more? Here. You have a question? No, oh, you're good? All right. All right. Okay. If you're still running behind, you can catch it on Canvas then. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move. All right. So I want to talk about this a little bit here. You don't need to write anything down, but you can make a note or two if you need to, but I want you to start copying what you see on the screen. The Zhao dynasty. Okay. Uh, they get the credit for inventing this thing that's going to be with us for a good part of the school year. Okay. It's called the Mandate of Heaven. And it was kind of a way to explain how things work historically in China. Okay, there's a pattern that they recognized, and they describe they label the pattern the Mandate of Heaven. So it works like this: you get a new dynasty. Remember, a dynasty is when it's a family that rules. Okay, so dad was the ruler, son's the next ruler, grandson will be the next ruler after that. That's a dynasty right there. Okay? So you get a new family that takes over, okay? And when this new family takes over, things are better for a while. Okay, they get to work, they fix the roads, they put people back to work. They take care of the problems, they take care of the things that make people unhappy. Okay, and notice right here, everything works better in the empire for a little while. Now that little while, there is no set time period for that. It could be a long time or a little time, okay, but for a while things are okay. All right, but eventually, and when I say eventually, it might be the great 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 grandson who messes things up. Who knows? Okay, or it might be the immediate son who messes things up. But eventually, that government becomes corrupt. That ruler becomes kind of fat, happy, and lazy. Okay, it's all about him: wine, women, and song. Okay, he doesn't care about the people. He doesn't take care of the roads. Okay, he just wants to wants a party boy. Okay, and he doesn't care about anybody else. Okay, uh, and so then at that point in time, bad things will happen. Okay, it could be famines, it could be piracy, okay, barbarians, disease, droughts, whatever it is, it's bad. Okay, and the people believe that those bad things are being sent by the heavens. Okay, and by the way, in China, they're not real clear about exactly the spirits or whatever, but something above us, something supernatural. Okay, has sent signals. Okay, to the emperor. Hey, you're not doing a good job. Okay, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Okay, and so then eventually, if things continue, okay, then the commoners they realize that hey, the heavens no longer support the emperor. Okay, the emperor has lost the support of the heavens, the spirits. Okay, uh, and so then it's okay to rebel at that point in time. Okay, and they the rebellion takes place, and you get a new emperor, a new dynasty takes over. So the old emperor and his dynasty they get overthrown. Okay, the new dynasty takes over, and the cycle repeats itself. So the new family comes in, fixes everything, all these problems down here get taken care of, and eventually it repeats. Now, this word mandate, You're going to see it again this year more than once. You're especially going to see it in the early 20th century. Okay, so we need to talk now about what that word mandate means. How many of you have a younger brother or sister at home? Okay, how many of you are the younger brother or sister? Okay, all right. Well, pretend you're the oldest then. Okay, um, mom's going to leave. Okay, your folks are leaving. Okay, they put you in charge. Okay, of your younger brother or sister. Okay. All right, so now you're in charge, which means you have authority. Okay, your younger brother or sister, they have to listen to you, do what you say. Okay, tell me this though: when mom says that you're in charge of your little brother or sister, does that mean you get to park them in a room in the house and you get to leave the house and do whatever you want? No. Okay, so you have a responsibility. Okay, you've got some power. Okay, your parents have given you some power. Okay, authority, but you don't have a choice about this. It's not optional. Okay, you have to take care of your younger sibling right here. Okay, that's what a mandate is. A mandate is when you've been given authority and responsibility. Okay, you have to do it. So if you think about, for example, a dictator has authority, but does he have to take care of the people? No, he doesn't. I mean, he should, but he doesn't have to. Okay? He doesn't have to at all. Okay, but here the emperor was supposed to have to take care of the people. The heavens have given him responsibility. You get to be the ruler, okay, but you better use that power to take care of the people here. Okay, all right. And so this mandate can be taken back, though. It can be taken back by the heavens, the spirits. Okay, all right. Moving on here. Trans-regional trade. People, humans in general, tend to not do anything unless they have to. And trade did develop out of necessity. People needed things that they didn't have. And we've talked about bronze already in here. Okay, copper, you could find that fairly easy, but tin was hard to find. And so that caused them to set out on the roads to go find tin or across the seas. We'll mention here in a few minutes. That's just one example. However, when people began to travel for trade, they also spread ideas, like you read about in chapter 1, religions, unfortunately also diseases. And here are some civilizations in period 1 that were trading with each other. And I'll show you a map in a minute here of Nubia, but that's where modern Sudan is. If you already know where it is, but I'll show you a map. But they were using the Nile River to trade with each other. We talked already about Mesopotamia was trading with the Indus civilization, and they weren't trading over land. We primarily were trading via the ocean. And then Mesopotamia is trading with Egypt. What does that word transregional mean again? Across regions, between regions, from one region to another. You're going across. You would have to be going like no. You might cross a region, but you're connecting two regions together. See, this one right here would be northern Africa, okay, and this would be more like eastern Africa right here. That's probably the closest of any of the others that are up here. This is obviously, this is in Western Asia. This is in Southern Asia, and this is going to be in Western Asia, and this is going to be in North Africa here. Okay, moving on here. Now, this map, we're not going to spend much time on it. It's kind of blurry. I apologize for that. But there's the Hittites that we've talked about. What did they come up with? Yeah, ironworking, good knowledge of ironworking. In a few weeks, we're going to give you a project called it's called Southernization. You're actually going to be making maps, kind of like this right here, okay, or kind of like that pink one right over there above her head on that map right there. You see all the little products right there, and also there's a key. There's a key right there. You're going to be doing things like that. Uh, but there's some kind of cool stuff up here. Notice swords and daggers were kind of a thing, okay? And so we were selling swords and daggers back and forth. Now this right here, okay, this green arrow, okay, it says 10 from the, I believe it says 10 from the west, I believe. But the Phoenicians, who we're about to talk, the Phoenicians right here, okay, uh, they were fantastic sailors, and they had somehow, we don't know how they figured this out, but they found a pretty good supply of tin. Anybody know where? Notice that the arrow's coming back, okay, into the Mediterranean. Anybody know where the Phoenicians were going to get this tin? Yes. Where? No, not to our knowledge. Okay. Yes. No. It was England. Okay. They were going out of the Mediterranean up the coast, okay, of Western Europe to England. Again, how the discoveries were made, nobody knows. But eventually, the Phoenicians heard that, hey, there's tin in England, and they got a lot of it, okay? And so they began to bring it back into the Mediterranean. Okay, now, so let's talk about these guys, the Phoenicians. Time to write again. Okay, as I mentioned to you, these guys are. You okay over there? Uh, where'd you come from? Okay. Um, the Phoenicians lived along this eastern coastline right over here of the Mediterranean originally. So this is what it's kind of hard to see it right here to tell what you're looking at. See, this is the Mediterranean here, okay? And so you can see some modern day countries up here just for reference, okay? So you can see Syria, okay, Jordan right here, okay, Israel. You've got Lebanon right in here, and so this area of Lebanon is mainly like where you would have found the Phoenicians back then. Uh, but from here, they colonized the Mediterranean. All these red areas on this map right here, okay, Crete, for example, Sardinia, Sicily, okay, southern Spain, North Africa over here, all of these were settled by Phoenicians. And they developed what you're using right now at this very moment. What you see up here on the screen, these characters, our alphabet was developed by the Phoenicians. Now, they had fewer characters than we do. We added the Greeks actually added more. The Greeks added the vowels, most of the vowels. There were a few the Phoenicians had, but the Greeks added more vowels to it. But notice what it says right there. Why did they develop the alphabet? To record their trade. Exactly, to record their trade. Okay. These guys are sailors. Okay. They want to bring cargo, things of value. Okay. Think about cuneiform. We looked at it yesterday. Okay. Cuneiform. Did it have just how many letters in our alphabet? Okay, so the Phoenicians had less than that. Okay. You saw cuneiform yesterday. Do you think it only had like 20 something characters? No, it's closer to Chinese writing. Okay. All right. And also, how did wonder how did the Sumerians, Mesopotamians, how did they record? What was the medium that they recorded the clay tablets? Yeah. Do you think the Phoenicians wanted to have a bunch of heavy clay tablets, a whole bunch of them, because you got cuneiform is going to have a lot? Do you think they're going to want to put that in their ships? No, they want to bring stuff to sell. Okay. All right. So they developed like a shorthand writing system, the alphabet, okay, to make their lives easier. Okay. An alphabet is based upon sound. So, Chinese characters and cuneiform and so forth, hieroglyphics, those things represent actual things, concepts. The alphabet represents sounds, spoken sounds. Like I said, they set up colonies around the Mediterranean. Uh, Carthage, right here, okay, in North Africa. Anybody know who the Carthaginians fought with 3 times? Yes. The Romans, good. Yeah, three epic Hannibal, you may have heard of him, not the serial killer. All right. Um, yeah, Hannibal the general brought elephants into the Italian peninsula from North Africa. Uh, but all these places in red were descendants of the Phoenicians. Now here is an example of their alphabet right here. So here's what happens. The Phoenicians invent this right here on the far left, and this is just part of it. It's not the entire alphabet, obviously. But then, because they're trading with the Greeks just a little to the west of them right here, okay, the Greeks steal their alphabet. The Greeks had their own writing system. They had their own writing system, and they realized that this was more efficient than what they had. So they chucked their writing system and adopted the alphabet, and they changed it. So you can see how some of the characters are changed here. Okay. Then the Romans, right over here, the Romans steal it from the Greeks. And the Romans further evolved the letters to what you know today. So if you go to Rome and you look at like their monuments, and you can see the inscriptions and you can say, oh, that's A, that's a B, that's a C. But what can't you do though? You can't really read it. Why? It's in Latin. It's in Latin, and you probably can't read Latin. So, but you can still pick out the letters though, okay, and tell what they are. Um, just to let you know, the Romans had kind of a. We'll talk about this. We're going to be getting into to the classical period today, actually, but we'll talk about the Romans probably next week. But the Romans had a strange fixation on the Greeks. They conquered the Greeks, and normally when one people conquers another, do they respect them? Not usually, no. But the Romans, you probably already know this. What did the Romans take from the Greeks beside the alphabet? Yeah, their gods, exactly. Okay, took their gods. Anything else they took from the Greeks? Architecture, yeah. So when you look at Greek architecture and then you look at Roman architecture, it looks very, very similar. The only difference really is that the Romans have the Texas attitude. Everything in Texas has to be what? There you go. Okay, and so the Romans kind of blew up their buildings, but it's still the same pillars and so forth. Okay, okay, moving on here. Migrations, movements of people, the Bantu. You saw them in chapter 1 of your book. They're going to be on the AP exam. The Bantu are migrating from southwestern Africa, or no, excuse me, northwestern Africa, around the Niger River area, southwards throughout sub-Saharan Africa. Africa is a very, very big continent, and so it takes a long time. So the Bantu are migrating in period 1, they're migrating to period 2, and then they're going to be migrating into period 3. So they're going to be moving for quite a while. So you will see them on the AP exam. And what you see up here is what you have to know. As they move, they spread the use of iron. We don't know if the Bantu came up with the secret of ironworking on their own, like what they call independent invention, or did they encounter it's like through trade, okay, with North Africa? We don't know. But they did spread the use of iron throughout sub-Saharan Africa. You better remember this one too. They spread farming and they spread their language. Now, today in sub-Saharan Africa, sub-Saharan meaning below the Sahara Desert, I don't want you to think that everybody speaks the same language. That's not true, okay? But you already have an idea of how this works, and I'll prove it to you because you know this. Italian, Spanish, French, okay, and a variety of others, okay. What do you call all those languages? Romance languages. What's the root word of romance? Rome. Good. Or Roman. Good. All right. All those languages derive from Latin. Okay. Even English to an extent, not as much as those, but still that's true. So, but somebody from Italy who speaks Italian, they may not be able to understand somebody speaking Spanish or Portuguese, okay, or French, but there may be some words that they can pick out. Okay. All right. That's the Bantu language of sub-Saharan Africa today. You've got people down there. They can't really communicate very well, but there's still linguists can figure out. Oh, that word is like similar to this word right here. Okay. Um, okay. Another group, the Polynesians. I sure wish we knew more about this, but what the Polynesians, they just simply weren't. Nobody was recording what they did, but what they did was pretty amazing. At some point in the distant past, they left the mainland of Asia and began to settle the islands of the South Pacific, eventually reaching Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island. Samoans, descendants of the Polynesians, they are Polynesian. The Maori, and it just boggles my mind that people could be on an island pretty safe and sound, with food and water and a community, and they're like, you know what, let's go find a new island. Okay, and they get into these what fancy looking canoes with a sail, and they just strike out across the Pacific Ocean. Okay? And then they find new land. It tells you they were fantastic sailors. They knew a lot more about sailing and finding land than we do. Which, by the way, somebody asked me about this a while ago. Don't ask me how to use it. I'm not Polynesian. Okay, all right, okay. But this here is a navigational device. In case on the AP exam, okay, they throw this down there. Now this is a navigational device. They would have one of these things on their little boats right there, and that would help them get to where they were going. Now, again, I don't know how they used it. Okay, I'm sure somebody probably knows how they use these things. But they're what? Who said that? What? What is it? Like hold it up like this, okay, to match the pattern. It's interesting. Okay, okay. Now tell me this though. Do y'all on these boats here? Do you know what they took with them and they spread throughout the islands of the South Pacific? Not seashells, no. Chickens, good. Chickens. They took their food with them. Okay. Okay. So chickens, okay, were spread across the South Pacific. Can you tell me another animal? Pigs. Very good. Pigs. Okay. Um, now, uh, do you know what is a popular food item in Hawaii? Now you can buy it at Kroger and HEB, but I doubt you do. Pork is pretty common. People eat lots of pork. Spam. Spam. Yeah. It's real. I remember I used to have it when I was a little kid, but and I tried it some years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that eating that when I was a little kid. It's way too salty for me now, but anyway. Okay, another group of people here, the Aryans. Now, the Aryans, we know even less about them than the Polynesians. Um, Again, because they weren't writing, and nobody was writing about them either. And sometimes these are referred to as Indo-European. I bet you probably heard that, Indo-European language. Okay? Uh, the Aryans, they came from somewhere in this area, right in here, okay, right in this area here, um, and they moved in different directions. Now, what we're talking about right there is the group that went from here down into India, into northern India, like this. So they start off up here and move down, but others actually came across and moved and settled into the Greek Isles, and then others went way up here to Scandinavia. And we know this because linguists have shown that down here there are words that are similar to words spoken here in Southern Europe and also in Northern Europe. So that tells us that there was a root language that probably came out of this area right here, and then as people migrated in different directions, they took that language with them and evolved over time. And also, we've also noticed something else too: the gods, like the Greek gods. Okay? Who's like the head of the Greek gods? Okay. Now up here in this area, any name of God up there? Good. Odin is very similar to Zeus, okay? And then you also have similar, okay, gods over here in this area. So again, they probably had a common religion, and people took that religion with them as they spread around. By the way, today, today, right here where I'm pointing, right in this area, there's a country that's name is derived from that word Aryan. What is it? Iran. That's right. Okay, Iran. Uh, so in other words, the Aryans didn't just all keep going into settle here, some of them stopped in this area right here, and so that's where Iran gets its name from. Okay, okay. Religion during period one, polytheism is the common type of religion, the belief in many gods. Now, the gods are going to change from one place to another, but most people believe in multiple gods. However, during this time period, monotheism gets started. And the Jews, the Hebrews, they typically are given credit for starting this. Although some people argue you can find evidence in some other areas. And even the Jews themselves were polytheistic at one time when you go back far enough. However, this concept of monotheism, a single God, clearly, obviously influences Christianity and then later Islam. And when we cover Islam, we're going to mention a term called dhimmi, which means people of the book. And what they're referring to is Jews and Christians, meaning that the Quran mentions Jews and Christians, as in like they all believe in the same God. They're all monotheistic religions. All right, some other religions. The Vedic religion, which your textbook talked about in chapter 1 a little bit, that's going to turn into Hinduism eventually, or Hinduism will be derived from it. Zoroastrianism, which some folks got confused because Zoroastrianism, as you see right there, is in Persia. Look at this. Look at the Persia is where Iran is, right there. Okay, and the question was name an Eastern religion. Okay, okay, not a Central Asian religion. Okay, so yeah, there's a little bit of a mistake there by some people. Okay.
Zoroastrianism is still practiced today, but it's pretty much dying out.
Yeah, and they also have different names, Parsis, I believe. But anyway, yes.
No, they're sometimes called Pars or Athens.
Okay. I know that it's with you. Zoroaster was the prophet. That's where it gets its name from. And it's pretty cool when you study Zoroastrianism because they had a belief that there was a good God and an evil God. There were some others too, but those are the two main ones: a God of good and a God of evil. And that we people, humans, we make a choice to follow one of those two gods by our behavior. Okay. So if you're a moral person, a good person, then you are a follower of the God of good. If you're immoral, do bad things, you're a follower of the God of evil. And Zoroaster preached that at the end of time, there would be an epic battle between the God of good and God of evil and their forces. The God of good, of course, good always wins. The God of good would win, and the God of evil and all of his followers would be cast into a lake of fire. Okay? Sound a little similar to you? Okay. All right. So we believe that belief, okay, influenced these other religions right here. Okay. Okay, moving on. Literature. Once you had writing systems for record keeping, then literature develops soon after. And a few examples of literature from period one: the Epic of Gilgamesh, which has like a number of stories in it. And unfortunately, it's not complete. We don't have the full story. But one really cool thing about the Epic of Gilgamesh is it tells the story of a man who builds a boat and packs it with animals in his family. Noah's Ark. Okay, that's right. There's a flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, the man is not named Noah, but the similarities are incredible. Okay, For example, at the end of towards the end of the story of Noah's Ark, he releases a bird to go, look for dry land. What was that bird? Good. And then, but in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's not a dove, but it's a bird. I think it might be a raven, but I could be wrong. But it's another. So it's simply, but still, man releases a bird after a flood to go find dry land. It's clearly, and think about this too. Okay, Mesopotamia, like the Babylonians, Sumerians. Okay, and then think about where the Jews, okay, originated. Okay, same area. So we think there was a little bit of crossover, between the stories and belief systems. Okay? Uh, Over in South Asia, you've got the Rig Veda, and in Egypt, you've got the Book of the Dead.
Book of the Dead is like all the people, all the honorable people who have died and what are they?
Their stories, their kind of like biographies. It's been a long time since I looked at it, but I believe the Epic of Gilgamesh blames the flood. I forgot the name of the god, but the god was known for having a bad temper, and he was sleeping, and the noise of the people woke him up, and so he was grumpy because he got woken up, and so he sent the floods. So I think that's how that story begins. Okay. Again, if you get behind, you can just check Canvas. All right. So here's a final thing for period one right here. Final Jeopardy question. Okay. Why are these civilizations important? If they're all gone, except for maybe China, okay, why are they important? Well, all the stuff we've talked about still survives, like knowledge of ironworking or writing or money. Even the time of day, that was developed back in period one by the Babylonians. They're the ones who divided the day up into 24 hours and hours into minutes and minutes into seconds. And we still use that exact same system today. Um, so, yes, no one uses hieroglyphics anymore, but the concept of writing survives. The utility of writing, how efficient it is, how much easier it makes things when you can write things down and so you can have records of it. Uh, Iron, you're going to see here in just a second. I'm going to show you. I think we're going to have time to show you. Uh, the period two civilizations, like the Romans, for example, okay, they are going to be physically much larger than your period one civilizations because they start with ironworking. Everybody knows about iron when period two starts. It's not a secret anymore. Okay? And so that helps them grab more land very, very quickly. And so they're going to cover more larger areas. And there's an expression, let's not reinvent the wheel. Well, we don't have to because they did it for us. They invented the wheel, and we've known the secret ever since.
Question. Question.